All right, welcome everybody to Standing for Truth. My name is Donny Budinsky, and I am your host for today's valuable program. On Standing for Truth, we defend the truth of biblical creation. And today I am thrilled to have Dr. Carl Werner back with me for part 3 of an ongoing series that absolutely dismantles evolution. This series is essential for those interested in the origins debate. And the information that has been presented and will continue to be presented in today's program is truly groundbreaking. Today's program focuses on living fossils, and I am excited for what Dr. Carl Werner has to present. Proponents of evolution love to point to the fossil record as apparent evidence for common descent. But what you are going to see today is that the fossils we actually find challenge the theory of evolution. Carl, my brother, it's great to have you back. I really do appreciate your time, your work, your energy, your efforts in just everything you do and how you are presenting it here in this series. So, Carl, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, and it's good to be with your audience. I had so much fun last time interacting with your audience, both the people who are pro-creation and those who are pro-evolution. I just thought that was just so dynamic. And as you said in the pre-show, but while we were talking off camera, it is kind of addicting. I understand why people spend so much time on their phone if they're able to interact with the host and the like. So yeah, it's great to be here. And thanks for letting me have time to share this really killer information.
Well, it's my pleasure, and I think you said it perfectly. Killer information. So we want our skeptics out there that are in the live audience to be objective as this information is presented and they consider it. And so we do these live to give you guys in the audience the opportunity to interact, as Carl said, and to send in your questions, your challenges, your objections. We want to make these comprehensive. We want to leave no stone unturned. Now, before I hand it over to my guest, Carl, for his presentation and his talk here, I do want to give him a formal introduction for anybody who might be unfamiliar with who he is. In his sophomore year of college, Dr. Carl Werner was challenged by a fellow classmate with these words: "I bet you can't prove evolution." Disturbed by his classmates' somewhat poignant criticisms of the theory, Dr. Werner, a biology major at the time, pondered this conversation for some time. From this point, he began his quest for an answer. Driven by his stringent scientific background and exceedingly curious nature, Dr. Werner read and researched every topic he could find on evolution, including paleontology, geology, biology, and biochemistry. After 18 years of study, between 1979 and 1997, Dr. Werner considered himself ready to begin a series of experiments by which to test evolution. It was his grand experiment to test the theory and determine its veracity. Over the next nearly 3 decades, 1997 till present, Dr. Werner then traveled 298,000 miles to museums and dig sites around the globe, photographing thousands of original fossils and the actual fossil layers where they were found. And so, Carl, again, I'm excited to have you here. Your work has truly been a blessing. I've been familiar with your work for years, since I came to Christianity and the world of young earth creation. So with that, Carl, let's get right into the fun and this killer information you have for us, brother. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Today, Donnie, I'm going to explain why all the natural history museums of the world need to close their dinosaur halls. And if they refuse, local governments should defund these museums until they fix their false and misleading dinosaur displays. I know all this because over the last 27 years, I filmed at 104 museums on 5 continents and interviewed the world's leading dinosaur experts. First of all, I want to have a little fun. And in the comments section, I want you to vote as to which of these two persons was a bigger scoundrel or a worse person. Bear with me now. All this has a little purpose. Here's the two individuals. The first person is a young Catholic priest who gets cut off in traffic on the interstate. The priest had to jam on his brakes, and he is furious. He speeds up and forces the other driver over onto the side of the highway. The priest then gets out of his car, gets into a fist fight, and chokes the man, and he dies. Now, the second person is a young, vibrant, evangelical preacher who loves the outdoors and is an avid, experienced hiker. One day, while hiking in the Grand Canyon, he comes upon a young man, red-faced, flushed, and lethargic. The young man asks for help and a drink of his water. Now, experienced hikers know that the Grand Canyon Trail has claimed many lives because people don't bring enough water, or they try to descend and then ascend the canyon on the same day and die of heat exhaustion. Because the evangelical preacher is an avid hiker, he understands the gravity of the situation, but ignores the man and walks out of the canyon. He never sounds the alarm, and the man dies. Now, according to their own religious beliefs, one preacher, the priest, committed a sin of commission. That's committing the murder. He choked the man to death. And the other minister committed a sin of omission. He didn't do anything, and that was the problem. And I'm asking the audience now, in your opinion, which of these two religious men committed the worst crime? And I'm going to have Donny read now your comments so we can hear what the audience is thinking. Was it the Catholic priest or the evangelical preacher that was the bigger scoundrel?
Good question to the audience, the live audience. Send in your answer and see who wins the big prize. So I'm waiting here for first one to send in their response.
And Donny, so not to belabor the point, but in your opinion, which of those two was the worst person?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I'm going to go with the one I probably wouldn't. People are saying that's a toughie. Let's go with the evangelical.
You're saying the evangelical?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would say probably the Catholic priest, since I'm a former Catholic, but I'm going to go with the opposite of what I would say. Maybe it's a tricky one.
Now,
so looks like people are thinking. They're putting the thinking.
Mm-hmm. And I'd ask the audience, are they both equally scoundrels? Are they both horrible people for what they did? I mean, horrible. Did they both do a horrible thing? That would be the real question. Or is one worse than the other? Are they both horrible, or just one or the other?
We're getting more evangelical in the audience, more answers. Apologetics 101 did say both. So I feel like maybe you said something there that sparked a difference in opinion now.
Well, and the point of this is that they both killed a person, essentially. And a sin of omission, like the guy who didn't give the other guy water, had done just as bad a thing as the guy who choked someone to death.
Right.
You don't have to do something to have a bad act. You can leave something out and do nothing. And it's just as serious as doing something serious. The only reason I bring this up is that scientists commit these same types of crimes. They do omissions, and that's leaving out the most important facts, which can be as serious a crime or, bad act as committing an overt fossil fraud. So the point is that omitting something that you should be telling people is just as bad as faking up a fossil. Now I want to take you to some of the natural history museums that Debbie and I visited, and I'm going to take you there through the lens of my wife's camera. And we're going to look at 11 dinosaur displays. And I want you to write in the comments section as we're going along what modern animals and what modern plants you definitely see in these displays. And Donnie can read out the comments as we go through these 11 slides. It'll just take about a minute. But before we begin, I want to point out a problem for those who believe in creation. Now, hold on to your seats. If all the animals and plants alive during the time of the dinosaurs were different than all of the plants and animals living today, in other words, during the time of dinosaurs, you have dinosaurs, pterosaurs, mosasaurs, but today we have dogs and cats and boa constrictors. That would force you to conclude that evolution is true if you think about it long enough, because the animals and plants changed from back then to now. In fact, these displays that I'm going to show you, and I'm just showing you just 11 random displays, were a great stumbling block for me. Even though the fossil record does not show evolution, doesn't show, a tree shrew evolving into a bat or something of that nature, the fact of the matter that all of the animals and plants changed from the time of the dinosaurs until now proves evolution to be true, or so I thought. So here we go. As we go to the, I'm going to go to screen share, and let's see, present.
And as you're doing that, Carl, I'll remind the audience that as more people come in for this live program, if you do have questions or comments regarding Carl's slides and presentation, please send those in. I will save them, and periodically during the show, I will put them up on screen for Carl to engage. Okay, Carl, your slides are up.
So the question is during the time of the dinosaurs, the age of the dinosaurs, were the animals the same as today, or were the animals and plants unfamiliar? Because during the time of the dinosaurs, now this is a display from the Natural History Museum in Los Angeles. During the time of the dinosaurs, you'd see flying reptiles. We don't have flying reptiles today like pterosaurs. You'd see reptiles in the ocean. We don't have reptiles in the ocean today like mosasaurs and plesiosaurs. And on the land, you'd find dinosaurs, but it would be an unfamiliar scene according to this first museum display, which again suggests that evolution is true. Everything changed, you see? Now, in this display, also from the Los Angeles Natural History Museum, there's some duck-billed dinosaurs. I want you to write down in the comment section all the modern plants and animals that you see in this display. And now the next one, this is from the Carnegie Museum. It's from their dinosaur hall. It's a T-Rex. It's a Triceratops. And I want you to note and write down all in the comments section, what modern animals and plants do you see that you're sure of that's a modern plant or animal? And here's one from the Dinosaur National Monument. These dinosaurs are called Camptosaurus. What definite modern animals and plants do you see in this display to suggest that creation occurred? And here at the Sam Noble Museum of Natural History in Oklahoma, you see this Allosaurus dinosaur, you see this long-necked dinosaur, you see this strange bird with teeth called Archaeopteryx. But besides these three extinct animals, what modern animals and plants do you see in this diorama? And here is another one from the Sam Noble. And again, you got the flying pterosaurs, which are extinct. You got the dinosaurs, which are extinct. Do you see any modern plants or animals in this display? There might be a flower down here, but I don't know what kind of flower that is. And in this display from the Milwaukee Natural History Museum, the Triceratops on the side, T-Rex is eating out of the side. What modern animals and plants do you see? And I hope the evolution scientists, evolution believers are answering this too. By the way, they pointed out that this is a ginkgo tree, but it's not the modern ginkgo tree. It's a different species of ginkgo that's not alive today. And in this display, what modern plants and animals can you see that you say, oh, I'm sure of it, that's a modern animal or plant? Well, there's kind of a crocodilian down here. I don't know if you would know that that's modern or not. That's kind of hard to see. There is a turtle way over here. That might be modern, but that's pretty much it. And in the next one, this is from Ghost Ranch in New Mexico, where they found this 1,000 coelophysis dinosaurs. Do you see any animals or plants that are modern? And if so, write them down in the comments. And this is the plant life seen again at the Sam Noble Museum. And out of these plants and animals, can you say for sure that these are modern animals or plants? And which ones are they? Now, there is a cycad here. I want to point out the cycads are alive today down in Louisiana, but this is a different species. The cycads during the time of the dinosaurs were a different species than today's. So I wouldn't include those. But do you see modern animals and plants? And even just the overall view of dinosaur times, the dinosaurs, according to evolution scientists, involve 3 time zones and rock layers: the Triassic, Jurassic, and the Cretaceous. And they call it the age of the reptiles because really reptiles were the dominant animal. You really don't see mammals in these displays. So it appears that evolution is true, right? Because everything changed. Donnie, did anyone in the audience, write in that they saw modern animals and plants?
No, it seems to be basically unanimous, agreed upon that there are none.
Zero. And this gives us a conundrum because we know in the fossil record there's no ancestors to so many of the animal groups that would say evolution is not true. But then here we go to this displays at all the museums, and I've been to so many of them, and that would say evolution is true. And see, it can't be both ways. It's either it's true or it's untrue. And this was my second experiment that I conducted. I made this prediction. I said, you know what? If creation was true, and if, let's just say creation is true, God made all the animals and plants in the creation week, and it would be humans, it'd be dogs and cats and dinosaurs and pterosaurs. All of the animals that have ever lived on the earth were present during the creation event. And then later on, there was a flood. If the flood would be like one of those globe bowls that your grandma has, a snow shaker, your grandma has on a dresser where you shake it up and the snow falls onto the ground. So if all the animals and plants during the Noah's flood were then mixed up in a flood and then fell to the bottom, you should find some animals that are modern next to the dinosaurs and in the fossils. And yet we went from museum to museum, dinosaur dig site to dinosaur dig site. And when we asked this question, did you find any modern species of animals or plants in your dinosaur dig site? The answer was uniformly no, there are no modern animals or plant species in the dinosaur layers. And so once again, it's a conundrum. Well, that means evolution is true, but I didn't believe it because look at the fossil record. The sponges just show up without evolutionary ancestors. The corals just show up without evolutionary ancestors. The arthropods just show up without evolutionary ancestors. The bats show up without evolutionary ancestors. I said, if that's true, that means there would have to be modern animals buried alongside dinosaurs. And we persisted. I eventually asked my wife to photograph every fossil that was found in a dinosaur rock layer on display at museums. And this is where we accumulated about, hundreds of thousands of photographs, where she photographed all the fossils that were labeled Jurassic, Triassic, and Cretaceous, because they would be from the dinosaur layers. Some of them kind of look modern, but they always had different species. And I was still stuck until this first fossil. And I'm going to go now to a different screen. I'm going to show you my book called Living Fossils. Hold on. Let's see. Oh, here it is. Nope, that's the wrong one. Living Fossil book.
Carl, you're doing a great job stirring up the chat, brother. The chat is already very lively. It's what I like.
And see, it would be so boring if it was just creationist or just evolutionist. That would be so boring. And
Right.
I love controversy, not really, but I love the stirring up. And the reason is we're stirring up thoughts and processes. Just like my friend challenged me and he asked just some questions. I'm just asking questions to get you to consider
Right.
that there's a sin of omission here.
It's a lot more fun when it's not just an echo chamber, when we got both sides, both views, and we're stirring up thoughts, brother.
And we're so glad you're here. Everybody, we're so glad you're here. So this is a fossil that finally broke the camel's back. And this is a fossil that would ultimately be the reason why all dinosaur halls need to be closed and defunded until they fix the problem I'm going to show you here, because this is exciting. As I said, sometimes we come upon these fossils that were found next to a dinosaur, and like this one. Let me just see if I can get this on highlight. This one here. Oh, no, I can't do that. Sorry, I'm highlight. But anyway, this fossil here at the bottom. Can you see my cursor here or not?
Yes.
Yeah. So this fossil was found in a dinosaur rock layer. When I saw it, I thought, it kind of looks like a modern nautilus. But if you look at the species name, the modern nautilus is Nautilus pompilius. You see this? Nautilus pompilius. Can you see that, Donnie? Right here?
Yeah. Yeah.
But the fossil nautilus found next to a dinosaur, it's not Nautilus pompilius, it's Cynoceras texanum. See, it's a different genus, it's a different species, and it's not the same animal. So I thought. But then I came upon another nautilus, and this one allowed me to basically take a microscope and look inside. It's not really a microscope, but this one is also a nautilus that was found during the dinosaur rock layers, in the dinosaur rock layers. This fossil lived with the dinosaurs. This animal lived with the dinosaurs. It was buried alongside a dinosaur. But at the Australian Museum, when they displayed it, they took a saw and cut it in half so I could see the inside. And that's the part that was always missing, because I could never confirm that they were right, that it's a different genus and all this. Now, this is a dinosaur nautilus, and this here is a modern nautilus. These are whole, these are cut in half. Now, if you look at a modern nautilus cut in half, you can see what's called the siphuncle, which is that tube that allows them to balance the air in the chambers. You can't see the siphuncle, but you can see where where it goes through here, right there. But in the dinosaur one, you can actually see the siphuncle, this tube, and you can see every chamber all the way to the center. And if you look at these, they are essentially an exact match. But watch this. This is a key, and listen carefully. The modern nautilus is Nautilus pompilius. Right here, you can see it, the name, genus name, and species. But this one, even though it looks exactly the same, they put it in a different genus and call it Cynoceras, and a different species, Lineatus. It's the same animal, and they changed the name. And why would you change the name? Who knows? But what it does is it creates the illusion of evolution. See, unless you got 27 years to run around the world taking photographs of both live and fossilized animals and lay them next to each other, you ain't gonna ever figure this out. And if you only read it in a book and you said, oh, and the book sentence said, in the time of the dinosaurs, the nautiluses were different. They were a different species, Cenoceros lineatus. But if you had someone that actually went and got the picture of this and put it next to this, you would realize that this is a travesty. And this is how the whole fossil record has gone in the dinosaur layers. And this is why the museums need to close the dinosaur halls until they fix this. And this is just a start. Okay. It's not about a shellfish. It's about changing the names, and it's about the displays, because they essentially never put the modern animals with the dinosaurs. So the next question is, well, what animals have been found with the dinosaurs that are essentially modern, but they just renamed them, but they are modern looking. And I'm just going to take you through, if you want to do, by the way, if you want to see this, you can get this book called Living Fossils that I wrote with Debbie, and then I'll also get the video. It's a television quality video, and it'll go through all these interviews. I'm not going to do that detail. I'm just going to show you the good stuff, the pictures. Okay. So I got to flip through some pages here, and I'm going to put the pages on. I'm just going to show you modern animals that were found next to dinosaurs. And on each page of our book, we have a picture of a fossil, and then we have the modern animal, the fossil, and the modern animal. All the fossils in this book are fossils found next to dinosaurs. Got that? So this is a dinosaur era fossil, and it looks like the modern dragonfly. But look what they did to the species and genus name. This should be the same genus at least, and probably should just be the same genus and species. The modern dragonfly is Pachydipax longipennis, but they changed it for the fossil. Do you see how deceptive that is? Now look at this katydid. The modern katydid, that's my fingers. The fossil katydid, we took that picture in Germany at Solnhofen. If you just look at this step by step, here's the leg, it's a different position. The antennae are up and these are going out sideways, but the wings the same. This looks the same. The water skaters look the same and are renamed. The water bugs look the same and are renamed. Different genus names. Are you kidding me? The wood wasps look the same but are changed. The beetle, just an ordinary beetle, looks the same from the dinosaur era, but its name is changed to falsely imply that evolution occurred. Same with the scorpion fly. And look at this. This is a mayfly, an adult mayfly. Here's the larval stage of a mayfly. And here's the fossil larval stage of a mayfly. You can see the three little antennae like coming off the tail and the three legs in front. They look like a total match. And yet they would say none of these were the same species and that modern insects did not live with dinosaurs. That's what they would say. Here's a cricket and a fossil cricket, and et cetera, et cetera. So there also, Dr. Clemens said, who's a pro-evolutionist, said that the cockroaches look the same, the butterflies look the same, the bees look the same, et cetera, et cetera. So that's just insects, but just hold on to your seat. I got a little ways to go here because I'm going to take you through the entire, animal and plant worlds here. This fossil was found next to a dinosaur, and this is on display at the Carnegie, and this is the Carnegie Museum drawing of this fossil. And they said it's an iguana-like lizard. And look at this. Here's the dinosaur lizard, and here's the modern iguana lizard. They look, essentially the same, and yet they don't even put them in the same genus groups. That is so stinking ridiculous. Let's see if we've got another one here. Now I'm going to go to the page 108 here. Here is a box turtle recreation, at a museum, but you wouldn't realize it's part of the dinosaur displays unless you read every little sign, and it wasn't near the dinosaurs. It was just in its own little box. This box turtle recreated model was found next to a dinosaur, a box turtle, next to a T-Rex or whatever. And it looks essentially as like the modern box turtle, but look at, they changed the genus and species names. I'm going to sound like a drone here after a while, but it's important that we all really know what they did. Then we started doing interviews. Well, did you find any birds that kind of look like a modern bird? See, when I asked them, did you find a modern bird next to a dinosaur? They'd always say no. But when I asked them, did you find a bird that kind of looked like a modern bird? Oh, yes, we sure did. We found a parrot next to a dinosaur. That's this high-class evolution scientist, Dr. William Clemens from Berkeley. He said his graduate student found a parrot next to a dinosaur. Did you see a parrot in the 12 display pictures I just showed you? No, there should have been a parrot in those displays. And this National Geographic dinosaur expert said that besides the parrots, there were also penguins and owls found next to the dinosaurs. And one museum said the avocets. Again, this isn't next to the dinosaur, so the kids don't put it together, nor the adults. No one's ever thought about this should actually be in the dinosaur display. But this recreated model of an avocet, which was found next to a dinosaur, looks exactly, well, not exactly, it looks very close to the modern avocet. All right. So, and other scientists that we interviewed said that the albatross has been found with a dinosaur, ducks and loons, and other birds. So, gosh, by the way, Dr. Clemens said all of the modern bird groups have been found in the dinosaur rock layers. Or no, he said all the dinosaur bird groups lived with the dinosaur according to the genetic analysis they did. And so it's all birds according to the pro-evolution scientists. Now I'm going to jump up to the mammals. This is, oh, I'm so sorry. Sorry. This is a dinosaur era hedgehog jaw. And this is a modern hedgehog jaw. This is what a hedgehog is right here. My friends have some pets, hedgehogs. This is a dinosaur era hedgehog, and they essentially look like the same animal. The teeth look like the same animal, but of course they changed the genus and species name to create the illusion of evolution. Now, this is my favorite dinosaur mammal, and it's called Gobiconodon. And one of the evolution scientists suggested that Gobiconodon looked like a possum. And I thought, that's ridiculous. It doesn't look like a possum. So I did the work. I got a picture of Gobiconodon skeleton. And then I got a picture of the ringtail possum skeleton. And the skull here of this was at a different angle than this picture. So I took the skull just as a single picture, but this skull is this skull, but it's a true side view like this. Now, if you just start comparing this, it looks quite similar, except for maybe the positions of the bones. This looks so similar. And again, they changed the genus and species names. And this doctor from the Carnegie Museum, pro-evolution scientist, said possums lived with the dinosaurs, tree shrews, duck-billed platypuses, the echidna, which is the spiny anteater, et cetera, et cetera. And it wasn't just the plants, I mean the animals, but it was also the plants. I'm going to go to the plants now. No one recognized any of the plants in those 11 slides that I showed you, nor did I, except for the ginkgo, but they said it was different. But look at this. This redwood cone was found in a dinosaur layer, and it looks just like a modern redwood cone. They call it Sequoia langdorfi, but the modern one, they call it Sequoia semiperforans. So how would you even know that that's not the same species? It looks the same to me. Now look at this one. This fossil, Donnie, was found next to a dinosaur, and it looks like this branch, which is off of this tree, the Dawn redwood. I mean, they look like a very close match, and yet they changed the species name to make it look like they're not the same. This is the biggest revelation you will ever see in your life. Here's a special kind of cone. It's called a Cook pine cone. Here's the fossil. Here's the live. It looks the same if you look at it. And here's the fossil outside. Here's the live outside. It looks the same. Here's a pine tree like you'd see in your backyard. Here's a pine tree needles and branch found next to the dinosaurs. And here's a bald cypress tree live. And at this one museum, they suggested that the bald cypress trees were alive during the time of the dinosaurs, but they left them out of the displays. And here's a Kunti branch and fossil. They look the same. And going back to that ginkgo, see, this is that same museum. And I took a picture of the leaves on that ginkgo. And look at the ginkgo next to that was that Triceratops where a side of it was ripped out and the T-Rex was eating it. I don't know if you remember that. It was about the 6th slide or so. This is the leaves from that tree. I photographed the leaves on that tree. But look, it's called Ginkgo adianontides. But here's the modern ginkgo from our botanical garden, and it's called Ginkgo bilboa. If you look at the difference between these two, I mean, really, they look the same. And there's another dinosaur era fossil, this one called Ginkgo digitata. Well, some ginkgo leaves start to split as they age, and they get these splits. And again, this looks essentially the same. Hold on just a second. I want to track we're going to jump up a few pages here. 141. They used to say that during the time of the dinosaurs, there were no flowering plants. And Carl Sagan said that in his show that was on PBS. And yet, rhododendrons are alive today and have been found with the dinosaurs, according to the Carnegie. They don't put that next to the dinosaur, but that's according to their display. The poppies were alive during the time of the dinosaurs, according to evolution scientists, the lily pads. Of course, and then the sweet gum tree, my dad has those. Those have the gnarly little shells that drop and you have to rake them up. Here's a sweet gum leaf, modern, off of my dad's tree. And here's a sweet gum leaf. But again, they look so close, but they would say these are not the same species. Here's a sassafras leaf, the backside of one. Here's a fossil sassafras found next to a dinosaur. Here's a poplar leaf, a poplar fossil leaf found next to a dinosaur. Walnut leaf, walnut fossil found next to a dinosaur. Ash tree fossil found next to a dinosaur, all given different names, different species names. Soapberry, this is a viburnum leaf, modern. Here's a viburnum leaf fossil, different genus, different species, even though it looks exactly the same. And magnolias and chestnuts, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm going to get out of the screen share now, Donnie. So basically, evolution scientists have created the illusion of evolution by changing the genus and species name. Now, I know that in the comments section, there are evolution scientists or believers who are saying the following: you can't tell that that's that's the same species. How could you know that for sure? Well, the only way you can know if two animals are the same species is if they can interbreed. Like a beagle and a chihuahua, they look different, but they're both Canis familiaris and they can interbreed. Same with, golden retriever and a beagle. They're the same species. They can interbreed. The only way you can know if two animals are the same species is if they can interbreed, but that's only for live animals. But if you look at the skulls of a comparison of skulls of the maybe 50 different dog skulls. And you can see this comparison in my book called Living Fossils. And you look at a Chihuahua skull and a Beagle skull and a Great Dane skull, they look so different. And yet they're the same species and genus. So if in the same genus and species, dogs, there is a great variety, these small little differences are meaningless. Same with humans. You could look at the skeleton of a human and 50 different humans, and you'd have this great variety of the shape of the forehead, the brow size, how prognathic they are, their height versus, how short they are, et cetera, et cetera. But the differences, even within one modern species, are so great that you would have to claim that all of these animals are the same species. Now, I want to do one more thing, if you don't mind, just for redundancy. Debbie tells me I drive points into the ground. But
Carl, you take as much time as you need. This is awesome.
Isn't it awesome? I tell you, when I figured this out, this was like, I just wanted to jump up and down. So I want to go back and give you a chance now to see the 12 dinosaur slides that we showed you. I think I need to, let's see here. Stand by. Old person trying to do a screen.
You're doing great. You're doing a great job.
Okay.
I love how you predicted exactly what the evolutionists and the critics were saying in the chat. And I think your counter to it was perfect.
Oh my gosh.
Go ahead.
Now, can you see my slides again?
Yes.
Okay.
What was their world like? Yeah.
What was their world like? I'm going to go through the 11 slides now and show you why this museum needs to close their dinosaur display. The age of the dinosaurs was an unfamiliar scene. It was not an unfamiliar scene. There were hedgehogs and possums and viburnums and oak trees and ducks. You just left them out, and then you said it was an unfamiliar scene, which is not true. What's missing in this picture? This is probably the duckbills up in Dinosaur Provincial Park in Canada. What's missing? Where is the duck? Where is the boa constrictor? Where is the possum? Where is the box turtle? Why aren't any modern animals portrayed in there? Because if you saw the modern animals, you would say, gosh, dinosaurs lived with all these modern animals. I guess the dinosaurs went extinct, but the other animals did not. And look at this one. Where is the modern birds and mammals and where's the sequoia? And where's the poppy seed? And where is the oak tree? And where's the sassafras tree? Because they were all alive during this time period of when the T-Rex and Triceratops were around. And this is from Dinosaur National Monument. Do you see a cricket? Do you see all these other animals that we showed you? Oh, and here's a good one. This is from Sam Noble. They have the dinosaur. Got it. We expect that. You don't really recognize any of the plants, but they put in this extinct bird that has teeth called Archaeopteryx. Well, why don't they put the other animals besides that? Why haven't any of these displays showed a duck? Now, there was no ducks in next to this dinosaur, but if they're going to put the birds in sometimes, why do they only put extinct animals in here? And look at this. I miss this. I hope you can see this over here. They paint it so difficult to see. You have to get home and study this. And there it is. There is a mammal. It's the possum called Gobiconodon, but they don't make it look like a possum. They change its appearance so it looks like, oh, there's some weird animal here. Well, no, you don't even see it, honestly, because you know how you go through a museum. You don't even see this animal because they paint it into the dark shadows. And here, where is the ducks? Where are the other animals that were alive? Where is the box turtle? Where's the boa constrictor? You see, they have created an illusion. And by the way, these cycads, they said, oh no, the cycads are different. The cycads are different names, but they look the same. So yes, they said that these were a different species and genus, But if I put and you can see this in the book, the modern cycad next to a fossil cycad, no, they look the same. And the age of the reptiles, oh, by the way, do you know, you can take me off of full screen now, Donny. Let me stop sharing. You know, the age of the reptiles, I just would like to ask a question. How many species of mammals have they found next to the dinosaurs in the dinosaur rock layers? How many species? There's about 700 species of dinosaurs. Whoever, you know, that number changes from here and there, but it's about 700. How many species of mammals would you think that they found in the dinosaur rock layer? Oh, by the way, some of them look like beavers, by the way, and other mammals in the dinosaur rock layers look like Tasmanian devils. You know, it's about a 20-pound mammal. So, Donnie, do you want to guess, or do you already know the answer from reading my book?
I was going to say, but Carl, they gave it a different name.
Yeah, they're all different
they
names.
Gave it a different species name or genus name. So, it's different.
Yeah. Well, the crazy thing is I went through the work of finding the list of dinosaur era mammals, and the number of species, not number of fossils, because they might have 2 of one or 3 of one, but just a number of different species, is 422 different mammals were living during the time of the dinosaurs. Now, they're not lions and giraffes, but I didn't predict that you would find every animal with the dinosaurs. Right. I would have predicted there should be some if they're all mixed up in that snow globe on grandma's desk. So, yeah. So that's basically the end of my presentation. The wrongdoings of these museums have been known to the scientists since the year 1997. See, when I started my interviews in 1997, they already knew that the parrot was next to the dinosaur and all those birds. They already knew that in 1997. Then I released my book, I think in 2007, and pointed this out to everybody. And yet the museums have not changed. I keep checking back at the museums and they still haven't fixed it. So they've known this for 25 years and they won't fix it. And if they fix it, you're not going to believe in evolution. That's the problem.
Right.
And they're pro-evolution. So I'm so mad at the evolution scientists. I'm so mad at these curators. I'm so mad at them for changing the species and not making it clear what they were doing, that I had to do all this stinking work, and they should have done this for us. And they should be raising the argument and counter argument to what they believe. No, they hid it all. So that's why I have anger in my heart, Donnie.
Yeah. And Carl, it's righteous anger.
It is righteous anger. This stinks. And you know, in every area of evolution, it's the same way. They hide the bigger points, and you know, they make some big paragraphs, and you have to be a PhD to go through the paragraph and say, oh, he's basically saying it doesn't work, but you can't get it as a consumer. You read that paragraph, you think, oh, they figured out how life began. They figured out how the Big Bang would work. They figured out all the animal species, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So it is righteous indignation, but I don't want to get up on my soapbox because Debbie will whack me down when I get done.
Well, because these big dinosaur Hollywood movies like Jurassic Park or the films for children like Land Before Time, they wouldn't be as good or as cool, I guess, in the minds of the evolutionists and secularists if it wasn't just the age of dinosaurs, where they actually depicted reality, where you have over 400 different mammal species found living, coexisting with the dinosaurs. Suddenly, it's not really the age of dinosaurs, is it?
No, it's not the age. And if you pin the evolution scientists down, they will say it's a misnomer. It is not the age of reptiles. It's the age of animals, because all the animals are there. And by the way, if you compare the reptile groups and the invertebrate groups and the mammal groups next to, from now to back then, they're all there. Like for reptiles, today we have 4 groups of reptiles. We have the turtles. They're unchanged from the dinosaur layer. We have the snakes. They're unchanged from the dinosaur layer. We have the alligators. They're alligator family, crocodilians. They're unchanged from the dinosaur era. And we have the, whatever the 4th one, I've lost my list, but it's the turtles, the lizards, the snakes, and the alligator crocodilians. And the same goes with the insects. All the insect groups are in with the, the dinosaurs that are living today are also with the dinosaurs. And all the shellfish are the same, and the plants are the same. It's not a thorough list, and it's not complete. It's not every animal. Don't get mixed up. You would not find every animal next to a dinosaur in the dinosaur layer. But if
we wouldn't expect that either.
You wouldn't expect it. But if creation is true, you would find at least some. Well, I found more than at least some. I found a whole book and television show full of them. Yeah.
I find it funny that in this same time frame, well, first, there's so much to say because that was such an excellent presentation. So firstly, I knew and understood that there were a few of these living fossils, but it's overwhelming. I'm flabbergasted as just to how many, hundreds. Just with mammals alone, you're saying over 400, plus we have all these different plants, insects.
Donnie, I want to correct that.
Yep.
In the mammals, there's 400 mammals that have been found next to the dinosaurs, but many of them are extinct mammals.
Okay.
So the living fossil type, that ones that might be considered living fossils, would be the beaver-like mammal, the possum-like mammal, the hedgehog-like mammal, the duckbill platypus-like mammal, the hedgehog, if I didn't say that already, and there's 2 or 3 others. It's only about 8 mammals that I could say, oh, these are modernoid. Right. I can't well, the only one I could say looks really close is the Gobiconodon, and that one looks, because we have the full skeleton. But I don't want anyone to think we have 420
modern
mammals next to the dinosaurs. We have 422 different species of mammals, and I could say 5 or 10 of them look like modern animals.
Now, when you get, because we basically all of your critics' responses, which you predicted for the most part, they can be summed up into this. So we got our critics, which we're thankful for.
Thank you.
And we're glad that you're here. And so they will say, well, none of them are modern. But you're pointing out that no, we've got at least 8 to 10 that visually. Now, obviously, we can't do breeding tests in the same way that we do today. And we can determine that a Chihuahua and the Great Dane are the same species. We can't do that with fossils. We also don't have their genetics. But side by side, fossil and living representative look nearly identical.
Nearly identical or identical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And from the creationist perspective, anyways, if we're finding these animals from the flood, buried from the flood, okay, and some survive due to the archetypes and speciation, variation after the flood. Well, it's been 4,500 years. So if we do find some minor variation since then, well, that's what we would expect. It's not like it's a surprise to us as a creationist. Is that right, Carl?
And that would be the party line, Donnie. You're stating what most creation scientists would say, but I say it's simpler than that. And this is how I would simplify that. Is within any species today, there is such great variations that if you line up 2 animals and they look pretty close, it could just be the variation within a species without any change in the genetics. So I don't even like to give them, too much genetic drift, because it's an unnecessary gift to them. You can simply say there's so much variation. In fact, you look at a sassafras tree. If you got a sassafras tree in your neighborhood, just go out and look at every leaf on one tree. Now, they're all the same species because it's the same tree, but every leaf looks a little different than the other ones. So imagine if you found a fossil sassafras leaf and a modern that didn't look exactly the same. Well, that could just be different leaves from the same tree.
Wow.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we don't even have to give them that because, I mean, there's just naturally a lot of variation.
Tons of variation within each plant and animal species. Yeah.
So what I wanted to say earlier is I find it funny that in this same time frame, according to the evolutionary story, where you have these living fossil representatives, you have, again, according to evolutionary philosophy, you have a small primate-like creature evolving into a monkey or ape-like creature, and then eventually, into the Australopithecines, Homo habilis, and then eventually into modern man. In all that same time frame, those massive changes, increases in phenotypic complexity, but yet these living fossil representatives just stay the same. You pointed to alligators, obviously these mammal representatives, this 8 to 10, they're just staying the same, relatively no change. But in that same time frame, you're getting a small primate-like creature into a human.
Now that is an amazing point, and I'm thank you for bringing that up, because I didn't even remember to bring that up. Yeah, if evolution is true, how could you have the 200 living fossils that I just showed you? Why wouldn't they have all changed so dramatically? Why do 200 animals and plants not change at all for 65 million years?
Mm-hmm.
That should raise your question if you believe in evolution. I know you wouldn't change it based on that, but that should. Like,
Right.
Why is there so much stasis? And by the way, not to extend the argument, but I would extend that argument all the way down to the bottom layer, which is called the Cambrian, or the one below that was called the Ediacaran. I can show you fossils from the Ediacaran and Cambrian layers that look just like the modern animals. And they're so stunningly similar. And then you say, well, that's supposed to be 600 million years difference, and yet they don't look any different.
Right.
Thank you for bringing this up. I'm so glad, because this was an important point I really left out. By the way, I wrote up this whole talk this afternoon, so it's very unsophisticated.
No, I would call it sophisticated and mind-blowing. And any objective thinker, I think it'll be effective. It's very strong. And to fellow Christians, brothers and sisters, this should, at the very least, increase their faith, because a lot of people are just simply not shown this. I have 3 kids, and we do have several dinosaur books, and we like going through them. My son loves dinosaurs. And do you see this information depicted? No, it's always the age of dinosaurs, and it's always those very specific plants, very specific creatures, with none of these mammal species represented, or even the living fossils. And so this is a very essential, as I said at the beginning, program, Carl. And I wanted to point this comment out. This comes from a frequent guest, Paul Price. He's done a ton of great work. He's written some great articles for creation.com. And so he's being sarcastic here, because when it comes to stasis, evolution, they can explain up, down, black, white. They've got an explanation for everything. It's not really falsifiable in a way, because evolution is change, but it's also stasis. So to the evolution, it's all consistent. Well, these organisms didn't have to change because the environment was suitable to that organism. So they could stay the same for millions of years. But then when it comes to this small primate-like population over here, it was suitable for them to change into, modern human over time. Carl, what would be a good response to that, to an evolutionist that would invoke that argument?
Well, by the way, I want to thank Paul for the comment. I thought he was real. I thought he was an evolutionist. Yeah. And it is a beautiful comment. And you can't see, as you said, evolution, if it's true, you should be able to falsify it. But every time we come up with a falsification, the fossil record doesn't show it. You can't start life, from chemicals and all. Then there's always another story to be added. So you can't ever falsify it. The belief in evolution is like a religious belief. And the high priest is the professor at Harvard, and the Pope is like, Carl Sagan or something like that. Yeah. That is the religion. And when you have religion, you ignore everything else, because this is your faith. And I get it. But at some point, you can fall off the religion wagon of evolution, just like Christians fall off the religion wagon of creation, Christianity. And at some point you say, I'm going to give it up. I'm going to slip into the world and become a creationist. You can do it.
Yeah.
I believe it. I believe you can do it.
And it's fun. There's so much to study. We don't have to hold to the pseudoscience of evolution. And so you mentioned one thing, and I thought this was amazing. I thought of this as soon as you began presenting, because the evolutionary community, and they're largely right in this, they'll say that the gold standard of science is making testable and falsifiable predictions, and then testing those predictions and seeing if they're true or not. And so you pointed out that if creation is true, we should find modern animals and dinosaurs in the same geologic layers. And the question is that what we find? You made that prediction, correct me if I'm wrong, before investigating and doing your experiments, and then you found that to be true. You confirmed that expectation. Is that right, Carl?
Yes. I made a bigger prediction too, but I felt like I couldn't pull off the test. And I said my prediction really was that there would be modern animals or plants in every layer, but that would mean I would just still be running around the globe for another 15 years, and I could never do it because you'd have to photograph everything, and it could be the comparisons for all. I just said I'm just going to do dinosaur era because it's simple. That just everybody agrees that dinosaurs is an old time according to evolution scientists. But here's a trade secret that modern animals are in every layer. Nobody knows that. Nobody knows that, but it's true.
So I guess my question is, when it comes to the so-called geologic column and the way that it's represented in the textbooks, is that an accurate, based on your study, your investigation, your research, is that an accurate representation of reality, what you actually find?
Now you're opening up like a 3-hour discussion. You're trying to bait me into another discussion, but I'll tell you real quickly what problem I have with the geological column. And this should be bothersome to the evolutionists. Number one, we all know what the geological column looks like because we see it in the textbooks. The bottom layer is the Ediacaran, then the Cambrian, then the Silurian, whatever, all the way up. But there's no place on Earth where you can see the geological column, starting with the Ediacaran, then the Cambrian, and then the Silurian, Devonian, Mississippian, all the way up. There is no place on Earth where you can see that. Now, just right there, you should say, whoa, really? And they would come back and say, well, it's there. You just have to piece it together. So here's how you piece it together, by the way. You know how the lowest layer of animals, multicellular animals, is the Ediacaran layer. That's right below the Cambrian. Okay. The Ediacaran layer, to see that, you fly to Adelaide, South Australia, like Debbie and I did. Next layer up, the Burgess Shale. If you want to do the lowest layer of the Cambrian, you go to China. The middle Cambrian layer, you go up to Burgess Shale in Canada. And upper Cambrian, you go somewhere else. And the other problem is that it's not falsifiable because you can call layers different layers. Like you could have, okay, here is the Ediacaran, and we think this next layer up is a Cambrian layer. You can call it that, but it becomes non-falsifiable because all throughout the geological column, there are animals that look similar, and you can just change the species name of this similar looking animal in the next layer up and say, oh, that's a perfect example of whatever layer you want it to be. See, here's what I would say would be a very good proof if the geological column was true. That you show me 5 places where I can go to the rocks, just, like going out to Dinosaur National Monument, and you would start, and gosh dang it, I don't know if I can do this from memory. I'm going to probably mess up these animal names. So please excuse me if I'm messing up these animals. But in the pre-dinosaur layer, there was this big finback mammal-like reptile called, I think it was Dimetrodon. Now that one everybody would recognize, and it's always on the geological column chart. You got the finback Dimetrodon, if that's the right name, sorry. And then the next layer up is the Triassic. You would expect to see Coelophysis. And the next layer up is the long-necked dinosaurs. This is the Jurassic, Brachiosaurus or Brontosaurus or whatever you want to call them. And the next layer up is T-Rex, and the next layer. So if you could take me to a place on the earth where I could just see, let's start with those 5 animals. I could say, okay, there's Dimetrodon, if I got the right name. There's Coelophysis. The next layer up is, Brontosaurus, Brachiosaurus, whatever. The next layer up is T-Rex. Next layer up is this. It'd have some credibility, but I don't see that. I just see layers that are labeled Jurassic, Cretaceous, and the like, Triassic, but honestly, I have not seen where they have the killer identifier fossils that are so unique to that layer that everyone would recognize, that I could go to that site and say, okay, here they are, the 5. That's what you should be finding to verify this. And maybe you can only verify half of the layers in one spot and the other half in the other spot. But I don't know anybody close to that where it's unique animals, not the animals that are in every layer. Like, this shellfish looks the same in every layer. So I do have a big problem with the geological column. And I know I'll get raked over the coals for that, but I don't know. I've been to so many of these dig sites. I've never seen this. Isn't that strange? Don't you think that's strange that someone that's been to practically so many of these layers, from the bottom to the top, that I've never had to point it out to me? Here they are. So I'm going to get crucified for this. So thanks for the crucifixion. Thanks for setting me up for the crucifixion. But it is true. I just haven't had a chance to have someone verify it for me, but I've never seen it. Why is that?
Sorry for opening up that can of worms, but no, what you're saying is accurate. I mean, we've had we have a frequent guest on, John Mackay. He's a geologist over in Australia, and he and his team say the same thing, that when they go to these dig sites and they dig around, they find mixed environments. They're finding, sea creatures like sharks mixed with land creatures, mixed with plants. We find it's not as neat and orderly as you find in the textbook, where you find that exact representation found in every so-called layer. Plus, they have these flume experiments where they can see these layers formed in real time horizontally through the horizontal movement of the water. So it doesn't take millions of years to form these layers. And so, Carl, I wanted to ask you, and maybe that could be a session 4 or 5 in the future, just a whole show on the geologic column, perhaps. We'll see. So, unless you're going to say something, no, I was going to ask you something off of that.
You might have to wait 10 years for that, because I'm planning to write a book. If enough people are interested in this latest book on human evolution that we just wrote, then I'll continue going on. But, my wife says I shouldn't do the next book on geology, but I do have this in the back of my mind that there's saltwater creatures in every layer, Donnie.
Wow.
All from the bottom to the top, there's saltwater creatures. From the bottom to the top, there's modern appearing animals. So, I think that's an important point, but I could probably just tell you today and then I don't have to write the book.
Yeah, see, there you go. You could just tell us. And I mean, you've already confirmed a major prediction, which the evolutionary community, they want to depict it until you call them out on it, that mammals basically did not evolve until after the age of the dinosaurs. And there's this nice, neat progression. But what you've demonstrated is, no, that's not the case. That's not reality. And I'm curious, what would be the best response, in your opinion, to a defender of common descent? This is a frequent argument they use. They say, well, evolution has to be true, or a major line of evidence for evolution is that we predict these so-called transitional fossils in the geologic column. We predict where they're going to be found, what they're going to look like. For example, Tiktaalik, the famous fishapod, quote unquote, and then they go out and they find it. And so they're saying that they're confirming their predictions. They expect certain transitionals, they find them, therefore evolution's true. Carl, I'm curious if you've heard that before, and I'm curious what you think would be a good response to that.
The prediction of evolution, let's be serious here. What is the prediction of evolution? That a bacteria changed into a human being.
Right.
And that was over 600 million years old. That same bacteria changed into a hippopotamus. That same bacteria changed into a asparagus, and the same bacteria changed into an oak tree. Okay. So you can make up all this bull. Oh, we predicted TikTok or whatever, but here's the prediction. You predicted that as the fossil record would get better, you would find the intermediates between the bacteria and the human. And they're non-existent. And let me just tell you why. If you go to the lowest rock layers, that's the Ediacaran, there's a sudden appearance of the animal groups. So there's no intermediates between a bacteria and a sponge, a bacteria and a coral, a bacteria and a shellfish, a bacteria and a full-fledged fish, a bacteria and an echinoderm, and a bacteria and an arthropod. All 7 phyla appear major animals. I'm saying just these are crazy different animals, and they all appear without ancestors. Now, that was the real prediction. Let's don't forget what our prediction is. And then let's just follow one of those phyla. Let's just follow the vertebrates. That would be the fish and the amphibians and things like that. Even within the vertebrates, the fossil record doesn't match evolution at all. For example, they found 1,000 bats and no ancestors. How do you figure that? 1,000 pterosaurs and no ancestors. How do you figure that? They found 100,000 dinosaurs, 700 species, 3,000 of these skeletons were articulated, and no ancestors for a single dinosaur species, according to David Weishampel, of evolution scientists. And you just go on and on. And I'm like, when are you guys going to give up that? You can keep making up this BS where you have like a partial fossil, a fragmentary thing, and you can see it all. But just forget that. Go to the big picture. The big picture is there are no intermediates. And when you do have intermediates, they're made up. Like walking whales, we did the interviews. They're made up. The flying dinosaurs, or the birds, dinosaurs to bird, those intermediates were made up, and we did the interviews. And the human evolution is the other good proof. All those were made up, or they're fragmentary fossils, or they're fossils you can't get to inspect. So the whole picture is non-evolution. It's time for everyone just to leave the room, turn off the light, and close the door, because this is over.
Yeah, it's true. It's been completely overturned. That's why evolution, the theory of evolution, not just change over time. We agree with change over time, but the idea that bacteria, humans, and banana plants are related through common ancestry, it requires a lot of imagination. I like to say evolution is hope, dream, and imagine. And I think you've demonstrated that here in this series. Carl, it was episode 1, if I'm not mistaken, we discussed the Cambrian explosion, which you just reiterated there. Fantastic argument, excellent points there. The sudden appearance of all these major phyla. We've got the sudden appearance of jellyfish, trilobite, coral, these massively different kinds of creatures. And we've now had over a month for that episode to brew. It's had a lot of feedback, a lot of comments. No good, serious rebuttals to that, Carl, from the evolutionary community, even the best of the evolutionists. And so what does that say? Does that say that the theory of evolution really is bankrupt, Carl?
2024, that's the year that we're in. 2024 is a year that the entire theory of naturalism collapsed. If anybody looks at this with any hint of objectivity, you will say that it all doesn't work. You can't do the Big Bang. It doesn't work. The pro-evolution physicists agree the Big Bang is impossible with the laws of physics. The origin of life from chemicals doesn't work. Everyone agrees on that. The fossil record doesn't work. The animals show stasis through time. It just goes on and on and on. It all collapsed. Once the 3 best proofs of evolution went down, that is walking whales, dinosaurs to bird, and human evolution fossils, once they all 3 went down, the best proofs, and you show the best proofs are horrible, then it's over. Goodbye.
Well, I love that you said that, because I also put out a separate clip. So I put out a clip on the Cambrian explosion. Again, such an excellent series, Carl. Lots of great feedback. And one on whale evolution and how you did those interviews, and what Phil Gangrich, if I got his name right, what he admitted to or conceded to. And so whale evolution, many proponents of evolution would look to that as their best, that and the hominin supposed transition. But you've absolutely dismantled those.
Oh my gosh. I cannot believe the opportunity I had to dismantle the whale evolution, because we interviewed Gingrich, who did Pachycetus and Rhodocetus, and then we interviewed his graduate student who became a scientist, Hans Thewissen, who came up with Ambulocetus. And in those interviews, all 3 of their walking whales were shown to be fabricated, like they had added a whale's tail when none existed. They had been adding whale blowholes when none existed. They had been adding whale ear bones when none existed. They had been adding flippers when none existed. This is the best proof. And we had the opportunity to do the interviews on these And it's so nauseatingly embarrassing. I couldn't stand it for these guys that, they're admitting on camera over and over and over. No, it really doesn't have a blowhole. No, it doesn't really have a whale's, bullae of the ear. Yeah, it's bad. That was the best proof. Poof.
Yeah. So do you think when it comes to Ambulocetus, where they admit that it's more similar to a crocodile, can't be in the main lineage, and so do you think that that was more of just like a mammalian version of a crocodile, almost just this mammalian ambush predator, interesting creature, extinct, it seems, but certainly not evidence for whale evolution? What's your opinion on that overall, Carl?
I don't really know what it is. I'd have to see it. They always put it when they put it on display, like at the Rootstown, Ohio, I think it is, where it's on display, where Thewesen works. They put it in this extended version, like he's swimming. I'd like to really see it. Have another paleontologist who knows land animals to try to put it into a land mammal position, walking on his toes. That's the first thing I would like to see, because I don't have the expertise to say that it walked like a modern mammal. But when you look at his proof, which was an ear bullae, and he said it was a whale ear bullae, it's embarrassing. I mean, it's so stinking embarrassing in that interview, because a whale bullae, by the way, like on a sperm whale or something, our bull, let me show you here. The more I talk, the more likely I'm going to make a mistake. So
you're doing good. I haven't seen any mistakes yet, brother.
You just wait. I'll keep talking. I can't see it so good on this skull, but the bullae is a little bulge. I'm sorry. The bullae is a little bulge on the mammal skulls, and it has parts of the ear bones in it. And the whale's bullae, it's not attached to the skull. It's this really cool thing. It's separate. It floats in fat, and it's hollow, and it has a sigmoid process coming off of it. Now that's a whale bullae. Dolphins have those because they're part of the whale family. Sperm whales have them. But what Hans Thewesen called a whale bullae, it was not. It was just a ridge, and it looked like it had been attached to the skull, in my opinion. But no, it's just embarrassing. That's their best proof. That's the problem. This is their best proof, right. And a non-whale person can walk in there and get these interviews and just decimate it in just about an hour or two. That's embarrassing, really. I shouldn't have been able to do that.
Right, and you did. And there should be just hundreds of thousands of indisputable transitional fossils, as you pointed out, not a select few that we can debate, and as you've done, debunk, like the whale series, or a couple other interesting creatures like Tiktaalik. No, you start in the Precambrian, the Cambrian, you see this explosion, and supposedly a bacteria-like organism is supposed to evolve into a whale, plants, humans, so on and so forth. Where are all those major transitions? And we love our critics in the chat, but I put out a challenge about 15 minutes ago, and I said, okay, right now we're live, we're interacting with your questions. What's the best response from an evolutionist to the Cambrian explosion? And it's always the same stuff that you've already addressed, Carl, and you've addressed it in an excellent way. Well, the soft-bodied creatures, won't be preserved, but we find those preserved. So how's that an argument? Or I haven't seen any real good response to what we find in terms of the Cambrian explosion, Carl. What do you think about that?
Yeah, because there are so many soft-bodied fossils. It's crazy. Like worms, they're soft-bodied. They're perfectly preserved. Like animal embryos, 2-cell, 4-cell, 8-cell, perfectly preserved, but they're soft. Dog poop, crocodile poop, that's soft. It's preserved. Wow. Fish eggs, preserved. Flower petals, preserved. The bacteria are preserved. So if the bacteria are preserved, you should be able to see all the animals from a bacteria to the first coral or the first sponge or the first trilobite. Nothing. That whole record is absent. And you can't say that the fossil record's poor, because we have 1 billion fossils and many of the fossils are soft-bodied. Why would they be absent? There's no good reason,
Mm-hmm. So from a creationist perspective, you and I are creationists. We do believe in intelligent design, but we're not old earth creationists where we believe in all these different series of special creation events over time. What we find in the Cambrian, the so-called Cambrian explosion, would that be basically a pre-existing community pre-flood that was transported during the flood from one area to another, and now we find these creatures buried?
Would you restate that? I want to see if I caught what your intention was.
Yeah, because from my understanding, those that don't believe in a worldwide flood, but would hold to intelligent design in an old Earth, they would believe that these creatures in the Cambrian explosion, they were specially created. Some believe in progressive creationism, where over time God's creating more creatures. Hopefully I'm representing that correctly. But as young Earth creationists, we believe God created at the beginning, created kinds, including humans. And then there was a worldwide flood a couple thousand years ago. And so in terms of the Cambrian explosion, we find all these creatures, they just pop up out of nowhere. I'm wondering, is this a community that was essentially during the flood transported from one area to another during this cataclysmic year? I'm sure that's not where they lived and died. I'm just assuming that they must have been moved around during the flood year, if that makes sense, Carl.
You know, the rule of Occam's razor, or the rule of parsimony,
right,
is a scientific principle. And it says the simplest explanation, where you can explain everything in just a sentence or two, is usually the correct explanation. If you got to go through gyrations, how to explain this and stasis and this and all the, transport this. So really, every animal and every plant and every bacteria in the rock layers, more or less, maybe not the ones in the caves, but just basically every rock layer contains the animals that were living in the ocean and on Earth since the time of creation. And when and they were, like the sea pen was in the ocean before the flood, and so when the flood occurred, everything got jumbled up, and some of the animals ended up in this layer called the Ediacaran layer. And there we see some modern animals mixed with some animals that went extinct. And they were just animals that were in the ocean, and it was also plants. There's seaweed also in the Ediacaran. So yeah, and to go up one layer, the Cambrian, the bristle worm there, the hagfish that was in the lowest Cambrian layer they found in China, they were just living in the oceans, and they got mixed up in the flood, and they just ended up there for the Cambrian up in Burgess Shell. So yeah, it's just so simple. They all got mixed up, and every layer contains extinct animals, because probably around 90% of all animals and plants that lived on the earth before the flood went extinct. And so we're just left with this tiny remnant, but not everything lived through the flood. Even the land animals, a lot of them died off. So you would expect to find extinct animals. 90% of any layer should be extinct animals, and 10% should be modern animals. And that's kind of what you find,
That's what we find. That right there is the perfect answer. It's the simplest answer. It doesn't require a lot of far-fetched storytelling and going in 100 different directions to explain why we don't find the evolutionary precursors. I want to see the precursors to these amazing creatures like the Brachiosaurus, like you were talking about, Tyrannosaurus Rex, Stegosaurus. Let's see the evolutionary transitions and precursors leading up to those sophisticated creatures. So, Carl, your work is truly groundbreaking. 2024, evolution's been completely overturned. Brother.
And not only evolution, all of naturalism collapsed. And that would be because it's not just evolution, but it's also the origin of the universe was hanging on the ape men stuff. The origin of life in the primordial soup, that has collapsed. It was all hanging on these three best proofs. Now that the last best proof went down, human evolution, all of naturalism is over. I can't believe we're saying this. It's the most fantastic thing.
Why is it? And correct me if I'm wrong. I remember you speaking on this briefly, either in episode 1 or 2. Why does it seem to be the same 1 or 2 people, or maybe I'm wrong on this, but it seems to be the same 1 or 2 people that are finding all these so-called major transitional fossils, like whale evolution or the hominin fossil record? Like with these hominins, it seems like, you got Lee Berger. He's one who's finding all of these. Philip Gangdrich, he's finding a great deal of these. So is there an investment, or is there some kind of benefit to finding these, which is why we're finding a lot of them to turn out to be frauds
or mistakes? Yeah. If you find an intermediate of a human, you're going to become famous. So there's a great incentive to find an intermediate of a human, even though when you look at it, you know that it's not. And same with, not so much with the walking whales, but they did get some press on it. But if you find these things, you will be funded and you will have a job security till you retire. So there's a great incentive to use your emotions and start piecing together in your mind, maybe it was this, and maybe it was a walking whale, and maybe it did have flippers, and maybe Nalati is an ape man, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's just that you have so much excitement that you've lost sight of reality, and your colleagues can see it, but you can't. You're just so convinced.
You're just so convinced. Plus, there's major incentive, and I think that's a great response. So, okay, I mean, just to leave no stone unturned, we're very close to the 1.5 hour mark. I want to be respectful of your time, Carl. It's been an excellent series. We just had a lot of engagement from our live chats, but also in the comment sections of the videos themselves. We leave the comments open for people. I like to see what they're saying. And then also on Facebook. So I think with the whale evolution, the only real rebuttal that I've seen from the critics is, well, okay, if this whale series really has been debunked, it doesn't fit reality, because they'll oftentimes say walking whales, when whales walk, they'll look to what they say is a vestigial pelvis on some of these extant whales. I'm sure you've heard this argument, and also in some of the extinct ones like Basilosaurus. And so they say these are the remnants of when they were a mammalian tetrapod walking on land. They've now shrunk, they've been repurposed. What do you think the best response is to that argument, Carl?
Well, I'm not an expert on this topic, but in the past, people have confused whale pelvis bones as femurs, because first of all, the whale pelvis doesn't have to support the weight of the animal because it's in water. And so the pelvis is a different thing. In the pelvis in a whale just simply is the tie downs for the uterus, and the tie downs for the bladder, and the tie downs for different muscles. But it's not like a land animal pelvis. But it's my understanding that people have confused the remnant pelvis as femur bones. And all of these, you might say they're remnant leftover vestigial organs, but we know how that goes for human evolution.
Right.
All the vestigial organs that I was taught turned out to be quite necessary, like the appendix, the tonsils, and the pineal gland and all that. So I think I read an article that the pelvis and or these bones they're finding near the pelvis are copulatory for whale sex, that they are involved in the whale sex positioning. So that's according to evolutionists, and that's hearsay. I wouldn't consider myself an expert on that. So I would suggest you continue to search it out. I would please not take my words as authoritative on that subject.
Well, I think that's a good answer. We would, as creationists, we look to function, we look to purpose. And like you pointed out, with human evolution, I think 100 years ago, somewhere between 100 and 150 so-called vestigial structures or organs. And now we know that there's a function for basically every single one of them. And so when you hear the evolutionists say something like atavism or vestigial or remnant, as a creationist, we would predict some kind of function or purpose. And I think you nailed it. That's what we find in these so-called vestigial remnants in whales, is we find that they function in reproduction, Carl.
There were a lot of children maimed by physicians because of vestigial organs. They were taking out little kids' tonsils, and they would do this operation in the old days on the kitchen table. Like in the 1930s, 40s, the ear, nose, and throat doctors would take out them bloody vestigial organs, the tonsils, on some kitchen table. And some of these kids just bled out and died. That's bad science. And it turns out that the tonsils are very important for recognizing bacteria antigens coming into your system, and they produce markers for I think it's the T cells, and help the immune system recognize antigens, and that's the first line of defense. But yet they're whacking them out and killing kids based on some foolish argument, which is based on some foolish theory that really nothing backs up,
Based on evolutionary philosophy.
Yes.
Evolution has hindered science.
It has hindered science.
The whole junk DNA paradigm, vestigial organ paradigm. And I guess we'll wrap it up with this question. This has been another excellent program. I could do these every couple of weeks with you, Carl. You are a wealth of information. You're an excellent presenter. And I really appreciate your years and years of just diligence and study. This is information we have to get out there to people. So I want to encourage the audience to share this around on your social media accounts, share it around to your friends and family. And so, Dr. Werner, do you know what? So here's a critic in the chat, Andrew Cumming, appreciate it. He's wondering what the function of wisdom teeth might be then.
Wisdom teeth are for chewing. They don't come out until around age 16 or 18, I believe. And they're teeth, and they look like teeth, and they come out and they chew food. So I wouldn't consider them a vestigial organ,
If possibly in the past, pre-flood world, immediate post-flood world, if humans were naturally bigger, lived longer, had bigger jaws, bigger faces, could those wisdom teeth now be kind of a problem because we shrunk a little bit in body size? We've devolved. No, just speculation.
I don't think you need any of it. I just say they're teeth, and they come out later.
Keeping it simple. I love it, brother. Okay. Well, this, Carl, has been another excellent program. Time has flown by with you. Hour and a half feels like 5 minutes, at least for me. You're presenting, so you're doing most of the work, and you're doing a fantastic job. So, Carl, I want to hand it to you. This was part 3, episode 3 of this series, Dismantling Evolution. Are natural museums wrong about their dinosaur displays? And I think over the course of 90 minutes, we've answered that question comprehensively. Yes, they are wrong. And so they need to update those. Carl, I want to hand it to you for some final words and final thoughts, brother.
Yeah, the natural history museums need to close all of their dinosaur halls and put some yellow tape across them. Don't let the public in there, and fix this. This has been going on for 25 years, folks, and put all the modern animals that were found with dinosaurs. This is ridiculous that you have, misled children for so many years, and you knew the facts. Second thing is that this information is not going to do anybody any good if it's in Carl Werner's mind and doesn't reach your children. And this isn't a ploy to get rich quick on my part, but everybody needs to figure out how they're going to teach this to their kids. There's some simple ways to do that. I've already done all the work for you. One is to go through the 4 semesters of creation evolution debate in 7th grade through high school, anytime in that time zone, using my 4 textbooks, volume 1, 2, 3, and 4. And there's a teacher's manual. This should be taught either in homeschools or religious schools or public schools. It's all set up for any of those. And I beg you to consider implementing that, because this information, I'm afraid it's going to die with me. That's my fear, is I got the information in my noggin and then it doesn't get to your kids. It has to be taught to the children, and so please consider getting the curriculums and the books and the videos that go along with them. And I guarantee you, your children will love these, because a lot of times the kids, when they get the books, they'll stay up all night the first night they receive it in the mail for the class the next semester, and they'll stay up and read the whole thing in one night. That's how much the kids love these books. So please consider that as the way to change the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Excellent final words, final thoughts. The audience loves it because they're still asking questions and making comments. So don't worry, guys. We're going to do more of these in the future. Lots more Q&As to come. So, Carl, appreciate the final words. It's a great time to be a biblical creationist. And we want this information to not just be in my head or your head, like you said. We want this to become widespread. So to the audience, if you love what we're doing here, if you love and appreciate Carl's work, share this content around, purchase his books, beautiful images. I love the layout of them, Carl. And check the description box of this video. I've got links to the previous 2 shows, links to your websites where people can get your books. And I've also added your first 2 programs, Carl, on the website. So to the audience, go to standingfortruthministries.com. Go to the guests on Standing for Truth section. You'll find a huge list of guests we've had on. Go to Dr. Carl Werner, and you'll see his programs. I'll add this one soon as well. So, Carl, great job, brother. I appreciate your time. And we'll have to talk soon. You've been a blessing.
And thank you for your ministry, Donny. Without your ministry, I would be silent, So, everybody needs to take care of Donny with some contributions. I don't know how you work, Donny, but, Donny is part of the infrastructure of creationism. We need different groups. We need different voices. We need different programs. And without it, the scientists have no outlet, So please take care of this ministry, Donny's ministry, because it's very important. Now, Donny didn't ask me to say that, so it's fact. We need these ministries. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that, Carl. I appreciate the encouragement. I definitely need it. That's for sure. We all need it. We're all a team here. We have to encourage each other, be here for each other, and work as a team to get this information out there. So, Carl, God bless you. God bless what you're doing. Thank your wife for me as well. You've both done an excellent job to further the kingdom, brother. To the audience, thank you so much for tuning in. I really do appreciate the engagement. I have a lot of fun watching the chat during these shows and seeing all the interaction, the questions. So God bless you all. And with that, Standing for Truth is out.